Hey everyone, if you don't know me, my name's Ehud. I'm a writer, director, filmmaker from New York City, now living in Seattle, Washington. And today I'm making this video to talk about some of the biggest lessons I learned from my first major production at film school. And when I say major production, I mean multiple day shoot, multiple $1,000 budget, even if it's low thousands, a set with a crew of more than 12 people, all the fun stuff that makes a set really stressful. And I'm making this video for anyone, whether you're in the early stages of pre-production or if you have a shoot tomorrow and you're just looking for some extra words of encouragement, some insight into that experience. The film that I'm gonna be talking about, my first major production at film school with all that I've just described, is called Yes and. It's the video I released before this, as of now, on my channel. I recommend you go check it out before we get any further into the video, because there are going to be a bunch of spoilers if you care about the story, which I highly recommend you do. And also, to gain the full context, to really appreciate this video, it's helpful to check out the film first. Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to give you a bunch of advice regarding location, casting, and script. But if you don't get any further than this, the overarching advice, insight that I have that's gonna permeate through all of those topics is the idea that on a film set, you should be making things as easy as possible for yourself, especially on one of your first film sets. So let's break that down one by one. Let's start off with location. So till this day, between Yes and every other narrative short film I've shot, I've never spent money on a location. Now, part of that is a stroke of luck. I've been incredibly fortunate in the people I've run into to offer me locations, but it's also that I've turned down locations that I've had to pay for because I always gravitate toward a location that wants me to shoot there. And that's the situation you want to put yourself in. You want to be somewhere where you're wanted. You want to be somewhere where everything is going wrong on set and you need an extra hour, you need an extra 2 hours, you need an extra day. And that person's gonna be on your side. They're not nickel and diming you. They're not looking at their watch, counting the hours. So it doesn't necessarily need to be a free location, but a free location symbolizes that the person there is working with you. And you don't wanna have to convince anyone that you'll be good at their location, right? If they're saying no at first and you're kind of starting to make up white lies about your production, you're gonna be on edge the entire time. You wanna be somewhere where it doesn't matter if you have to blow something up on the set, whatever it is, you need to be completely upfront with them, because that honesty early on, it's gonna pay off later on, because you will run into the worst situation possible at one point in time, and it's gonna save you the fact that you have someone flexible to work with. So let's go through the locations on Yes and break down how I got those for free. So story locations are a fancy house overlooking the water, a gym, and a restaurant. So let's start with the gym and the restaurant, because those are the ones I ran into the most issues with. For a while, I was talking to someone about renting out the space in their gym, a really fancy gym. That's how I originally pictured it after it closed. And I was gonna pay him a few $100, but the caveat was that I could only do it at a specific time of day in the evening, and I had another scene that same day in the morning, so I was gonna have to do a split day, which means shoot scenes in the morning, have everyone go home, and then come back to the gym later that evening. And that's been done, but it just so happened that, for good reason, my school didn't allow it. And I was pissed at the time, but I realized that it's probably for exhaustion reasons, but also the fact that, again, going back to what I'm saying, you don't wanna make things impossible on yourself. And so because once you start noticing all these kind of omens, these kind of strains on your production, like, oh, you're gonna have to pay money, it's gonna have to be a split day, you wanna stay away from that option and maybe go with your second or third choice option for location, but one that's gonna be really easy to work with. So I ended up actually getting a family member's basement gym, which is really small, really dingy. It was hard to think how to make it look like a big gym, but we just worked around it and we decided we would do close shots of the characters, and in my opinion, we really pulled it off. So that's a great example of that. The restaurant was another one where it was really a stroke of luck. I walked around all of the East Village in New York, so many neighborhoods, couldn't really find somewhere, at least for cheap. And then I finally found somewhere with a guy who, the owner, worked there. He seemed really interested. He wanted to bring more business to his restaurant. And I said, all right, how much? And he's like, for free. By the way, the name of that restaurant is Miss Rizzy. It's in the East Village. If you can afford a nice dinner out, I highly recommend it. I have to plug that because he gave me his location for free. And again, those are the types of people you want to work with. Now, last thing on the location, the big location was the house you've all seen. There was so much more of that house that I wish I utilized, and I'll get back to that later when I'm talking about script and production. But that house I got for free because I wrote this story with that house in mind. It happened to be a friend of our family who had that house, and I was in it, and he was totally cool. He's like, yeah, I hear you're a filmmaker, you could shoot here anytime. And I had my intermediate production course coming up, and I wrote the script, a vague idea I had about this couple role-playing, and I'm like, it has to take place in that house. So that's another way you could go about it, rather than writing the story first and stressing about locations, saying, where can I set this film that I know I can get immediately that is gonna up the production value and up the quality of this story? So that's location. Make things as easy as you can on yourself. And similarly to finding locations that are willing to work with you, do the same with actors. So let's talk about casting. The actors that you see on screen in Yes And, I did not cast them till 1 or 2 days before the production. Prior to that, I was working with a younger couple. They were actually a married couple in real life. I'm not gonna go too deep into the story to kind of protect their anonymity and the animosity that occurred in this situation. But again, similar to what I was saying with locations, how sometimes you're fighting for a location and you notice all these bad signs, but you want it anyway, that can happen with casting too. I had this actor who really connected with the part, and he even brought his wife on board. So it just sounded perfect. I was already imagining my Oscar speech. I would be like, oh, it was like a documentary working with this real couple, all this stuff. But I started noticing some red flags. They were making a lot of demands on the productions, acting like quasi-producers themselves, and basically, wanted me to work around their work schedule. That's kind of why I was wanting to do that split day to begin with, not only because of that gym location I talked about, but also because these actors, it benefited them more with their work schedules. And I started revolving the entire production around them. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, the performances in Yes And by Tom Martin and Evan Hartsough, they were so good, why didn't you pick them first? It had nothing to do with the quality of audition. I was intending to cast a younger couple because I'm a younger person. With my bias, I wrote a younger couple in mind, and that's another big mistake, is something you need to be really flexible with who comes into your audition room. You might have one idea about what your story should be because of your biases, whatever they are. We all have them just because we're individual humans. But then you need to allow yourself to be blown away. So there was Tom and Evan came in, they were these older people compared to what the role was. They're not really that old in general, in my opinion, but I was like, these guys are really good. And in my mind, I was thinking, I wish I could use them, but I obviously can't. What happened was things didn't work out with the younger, real married couple that I chose. It was just kind of becoming an overbearing process. And I knew not only Tom and Evan were good, albeit a bit older, I gelled really well with them in the audition. I immediately felt comfortable, similar again to what I was saying, how you should feel with a location. And I called them up really casually and I'm like, hey, I know this is gonna sound like I'm a dick, but things aren't working out with these actors. And it's not that you're my second choice, I just didn't, you weren't what I had in mind originally, but I think you guys would be great. And they got on board about 2 days or maybe even 1 day before the production started. And it completely transformed the way I saw the story, and for the better. I mean, to me, this went from kind of like tangentially feeling like it was made by a college student to a story that included a demographic, a generation that I feel that aren't seen on screen as much, especially in a nude scene, especially by a college student. So I was really happy it turned out that way. So that's all to say, work with people who make it easy with you, who are low maintenance, who are devoted to the story, all about your vision, and work with people who surprise you and allow yourself to be surprised. Last but not least, certainly not least, let's move on to script. The script is actually something I'm really proud of. The story, the dialogue, how quickly I wrote it in relation to when the production course was starting, the fact that I had to write it for a course and I did it. Those are all things that I'm proud of. And even though I'm proud with the final product, there's more juice I wanted to get out of the story. And I'm not expressing regret because, I mean, for heaven's sakes, this was my first major production at film school, so I'm not expecting the world of it, but though I did shoot for the moon. To the moon.
To the moon?
There was something more I wanted to get from it. Until this day, I can't figure out what that extra juice I wanted from it is, but as I was thinking about this video, as I was thinking what I could share with you guys, I'm realizing that it might be the idea that maybe this script, this story is bigger than the time I afforded it. The class I made this film for, we were supposed to make our finished product under 8 minutes. This ended up coming out to 10. I had to shorten it to fit into the intermediate project film festival that we had at Tisch. But it was meant to come out 8 minutes, and I still think about this film, and I still think about that I feel it's a great idea and a story I connect to and I'd like to remake someday. But I think of it as a much longer project. I think of it drawn out in different scenarios, seeing these couples role playing. What are they like having company over for dinner? How do they interact with others? How do they see other couples? These are things that are kind of implied in the story but not really explored because the film is 8 minutes. But that's another lesson to pack in here, is don't lie to yourself about the length of the final product when you're writing the script, because you'll cut words, you'll cut actions, you'll cut the description down to like 1 word and fit the script into 8 pages. That doesn't mean it's going to be an 8-minute movie. I mean, I've seen scripts that said they were 8 pages and that ended up 20-minute short films. And I'm gonna make another video talking about how long your film should be based on the structure of your story and your inherent concept. But until then, you should really be thinking to yourself, breaking down, comparing your short to other shorts or other films and asking yourself, how much do they accomplish in the screen time that they have given what their story is? And mirror that onto yours and ask yourself, how long does this need to be? How long should it be? Because it doesn't matter how good your script is, if you only have 5 minutes to make it and it really should be a 40-minute film, you're not gonna reach its full potential. So that goes back to this idea that I expressed at the beginning about making things as easy as possible on yourself, not trying to fit too much into too little. And I did a lot of that on this shoot. Besides the split day thing I was talking about, I shot all of this in 2 days. It's a lot of dialogue to shoot in 2 days. I'm really proud of the work we all did on it. I thank everyone who was involved. But the more time you have for a production, generally it's gonna be the better. And of course, not every production is gonna be easy. Not every production is gonna be chill. You're gonna have your apocalypse nows, don't worry. But your first production, you really wanna focus on directing the actors, directing the cinematographer, composing your shot with the DP, stuff that the director should work on mastering. You know, not worrying about, oh, I'm running out of time at this location, oh, these actors have to be out of here by this time for work. You wanna focus on the story, on the cinematography, on the performances, the most crucial stuff. So if you focus on everything I've discussed, you will be in good shape whether your shoot is in 6 months or tomorrow. Thank you for watching. Check out Yes and, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one.